The 1980s, greed is good. Thatcher and Reagan are in power in the West. Around the world, conservative ideologues tell false stories about life and love. The most innovative filmmakers speak back at these falsehoods. This is their story, the story of 80s protest. The story of speaking truth to power in the 80s starts here. China. Probably the most interesting place on earth at the time. China looked like this in the 80s. But it looked like this too. There was a new openness in China. It was debating where it stood in the world, how modern and democratic it wanted to be, standing up to the old Maoist repressions. The fervent was thrilling and moving, and out of it came the greatest rebirth in filmmaking of the whole decade. Mao's Cultural Revolution had stamped out the fire of movie making in China and closed its legendary film school, the Beijing Film Academy. Director Chen Chongchong.
有那么几个教室，然后老师拿的那个讲义吧，差不多都是50年代，都黄了那东西，然后就觉得跟老师在一起好像，因为我们在社会上鬼混的时间太长，就跟老师的那种关系吧，都是那种称兄道弟的。
The so-called fifth generation who graduated from it in 1982 would be the most distinguished ever to spill out of a film school. They made some of the best films of the 80s. Chen's film, The Horse Thief, spoke truth to power because it focused on a very un-Maoist subject. We're at a traditional burial. A horse thief's young son has died. Chen films Buddhist monks in subtle slow motion. And these vultures who eat the corpse, a horrifying idea to Westerners, but a sacred sky burial for the horse thief and his family. Chen was interested in the mystical traditions of his characters, themes that were banned under Mao. The themes of Sergei Parajanov in the Ukraine. Having eaten the body, the vultures take its spirit into the sky. And Tian's films looked different.
我们讨论的东西跟老师讨论的东西不一样，老师跟我们更多的是讨论故事，讨论人物，我们更多的是讨论影像，讨论声音，讨论画面，讨论色彩。
He framed like this and treated color like this. Martin Scorsese called The Horse Thief the best film of the decade. Whereas Maoist films are about patriotic and exemplary types, the fifth generation were challenging their time by making movies about individual psychology.
我认为第五代是一个没有办法复制的一个时代产物，就是这些人在文化革命中跟社会跟人对中国的农村城市各色人等政治经济家庭情感经历了一个12年的一个过程。
The greatest village film made in China in the 80s was this one, Yellow Earth. Again, we're far away from modernity and big cities. Static shots, a sense of the scale of the landscape, muted yellows and greens. Communist soldiers collecting folk songs. He writes the ones he hears here in this notebook. Then the soldier meets this 14-year-old girl, and the film becomes about her gentle but confident femininity. She's sewing. Her head's downturned, the frame static. She questions the soldier but doesn't look at him. Women in Maoist cinema were supposed to be strutting and heroic.
你们队伍上有女兵。
多着呢。
不会唱歌的不要。
谁说？
那会唱歌的呢？
哼，咱队伍上缺。
是南道到下延安，远了吧？
啊，500里路呢。
哦，远呢。
问这干啥？
问问，不干啥。
Director Chen Kaige and cinematographer Zhang Yimou, who would himself become a successful director, framed the imagery like Chinese painting. Instead of being here, the horizon would be here. Or here. Male and female stood together in Yellow Earth's remarkably framed landscapes. The film wasn't Maoist because it had little action or conflict, but nor was it traditionally male and Confucian. The girl wants to join the army, to strike out at life, rather than to stay home. Instead, it used emptiness within the frame as a compositional element, and saw maleness within femaleness, and good within bad. Ideas more associated with another great Asian philosophy, Taoism. All this was deeply challenging. The legacy of Chinese film of the 80s was complex. Chen worked consistently until 1993, when his film about the Cultural Revolution, The Blue Kite, was banned, and he was forbidden to work for nearly a decade. Yellow Earth's cinematographer, Zhang Yimou, went on to direct some of the most rigorously beautiful movies of the 90s. His film Raise the Red Lantern was boldly symmetrical and had a striking orange-red colour palette.
怎么样?
But even it didn't prepare us for his mastery of digital cinema. All that was in the future. But back in the 80s, 5 years after the release of Yellow Earth, the sun went down on China's moving and exciting decade of self-discovery. Thousands of pro-democracy protesters were killed by their own government in Tiananmen Square. One of the greatest images ever of speaking truth to power. In another communist sphere, Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union in the 80s, the powerful communist authorities were starting to lose their grip. Life was tough, but people persevered and society began to open up. Filmmakers told stories about taboo subjects. The resulting movies literally changed the world in some cases and are some of the most troubling films ever made. This film, Repentance, created a sensation. It tells, in an almost comic book manner, of this dictator. He has a Hitler moustache, but like Stalin, is Georgian. A woman imagines that she and her man are buried. An echo of this much earlier Soviet film, Arsenal. A haunting static shot of a smiling dead soldier. The Stalin-like dictator eventually dies, but astonishingly, a woman digs up his body and stands it here in the garden of his morally corrupt son. The corpse looks unremarkable, like it's just relaxing against a tree. Director Abeladze had it filmed from far away in daylight. A symbol, of course, of the fact that atrocity cannot be buried. that the Stalinist genocide stinks of death. The president of Georgia and the new modernizing boss of the Soviet Union in the 80s, Mikhail Gorbachev, saw the film and approved it for release. It was seen by millions and helped spark Glasnost, the period of new openness in the Soviet Union. A rare example of film actually changing the world. Repentance was premiered here, the Film Union building, Dom Kino, in Moscow. As was this astonishing Soviet film from the mid-80s, Come and See. We're in Belarusia in 1943. Nazi bombs have just exploded. Into the frame comes the teenage boy of the story. He's fighting the Nazis. The camera moves up a bit to adult height. The boy seems to get smaller because of the wide-angle lens. The peak of his cap seems to reach out to us. The bomb has given him tinnitus, whistle, roar. He meets a girl. They go to his village. He can't find his family.
Знаю, где они. Пошли.
They run to look for them.
Балда! Пошли. Я не тут.
Then the girl looks back and sees them. He doesn't. The wide-angle camera tracking them, as if it's the awful thing she's just seen. In their flight, they come across this bog. This is acting at the limit of endurance, the roar of fear. We hardly hear their screams, the absurdity of a Viennese waltz on the soundtrack. No film is more physical. Another Soviet film about a near burial. Come and See's acting, sound design, staring, wide-angle camera work, and moral seriousness made it the greatest war film ever made. The director of Come and See, Elam Klimov, became head of the Soviet Film Union in the 80s. In this very room in the Union building, he and politicians discussed censorship, the digging up of the past, and films that had been banned because they were anti-Soviet, because they spoke truths other than the sanctioned ones. One such film was this one, Long Goodbyes, directed by the brilliant Kira Muratova. We see a middle-aged woman cut to a train, looking outside first, then zoom out to show that the mother's talking to her son. Jump cut. He's trying to sleep. She talks. A strange high-pitched voice on the soundtrack. No sound of the train itself. Throughout the film, Muratova has the mother and son look away from each other.
Только я не буду у них обедать. Ну почему? Ну почему? Ну что за причуды такие? Ладно, буду. Саша, я с тобой разговариваю, очнись.
She nags him. The music erupts.
Ну я кому говорю в конце концов? Ни за что.
Match cut to a man, then to the son. A strange jump cut on his hands. man's been replaced by an older man. More splintered cuts from different angles. Then we're outside the train, and then we seem to be in an airplane. What was all this about? This earlier scene helps us see the mum and son again, not looking at each other again, filmed in long lens again, a lens so long that the space seems paper thin.
Я ж тебе говорила, ты должен называть его папа, ведь он же твой отец.
Muratova's theme here was the way people can suffocate each other. Soviet films of the 70s and 80s were supposed to be about social themes, but this one's about psychological bondage. They couldn't accuse Muratova of being anti-Soviet, but the archives say that the authorities were terribly unnerved by the form of this film. And so, like the films of Sergei Parajanov, whom Muratova adored, Long Goodbyes was banned. Maybe they thought Muratova's long lenses and almost hidden camera positions were commenting on Soviet surveillance. Whatever, one official wrote, "How can you allow such an outrage?" Written on chalk in the film's canister was "not to be given out." But back in this smoke-filled room in the late 80s, a decade after it was made, Muratova's beautiful film was unbanned and released to acclaim. It had come back from the dead to speak a truth to power. She's one of the most underrated directors in the whole story of film. By the 80s, large chunks of the Eastern Bloc looked like this. But what if you did this to it? And what if you shifted its colour to this? These are the questions that the Polish director, Krzysztof Kieślowski, asked. His answers were about love and death. Meet Jacek, this twin. An echo of the scene in Hitchcock's Psycho, where Janet Leigh, who doesn't know she's about to die, lets people cross the road. But where Hitchcock's film was fear as entertainment, and then African cinema in the 80s was not undergoing such dark days as the films of Eastern Europe. Although some African countries were forced to mortgage their economies to the International Monetary Fund, innovation in African movies soared. In the 70s, African films had been about society, the here and now, the immediate post-colonial world. But in the 80s, directors started to look beyond the present tense to the horizon, the past, before colonialization. A rethink of what African cinema was for. This man, Gaston Caboret, did this brilliantly. His movie Wend Kuni was one of the first films to do so, a landmark in African cinema. This orphan boy called Wend Kuni, which means gift from God, has been found in the bush. He doesn't speak, he herds goats. Director Caboret's camera follows him from a distance and frames him alone outside the village. Then we get a flashback to a time when his mum was still alive. The boy's sick, they're under a tree in the shade. Then Caboret makes the timeline of his film more complex.
I put in Wend Kuni a flashback inside another flashback. And I did it without questioning myself. And it worked.
Here, the mother has her own flashback to her husband, a flashback within a flashback.
You see how aesthetic could be invented just because an artist is doing what he feels or she feels to be good for the story he or she is telling.
Then we return to the first flashback, the boy's memory of his mum, and soon afterwards we get back to the present tense.
I believe in mixed instinct in art. I believe in audacity, in art. And Africa has a tremendous treasure of stories, tales, mythology, legends. We need that because it's the food of the souls.
Cabaret's film speaks truth to the past, you could say. But then came another African film about the past, The Dreamtime. In this film, Yellen, which means brightness, this man, Nyankoro, has been tracking down a sorcerer father. Director Suleiman Cissé tracks around Nyankoro, like in a Sergio Leone shootout. Nyankoro has to destroy his father, so he's in tears. He faces him. A water buffalo in slow motion and a sci-fi roar on the soundtrack. Cissé tracks up to Nyankoro's stony look. Then his father becomes a mythic elephant. And Nyankoro is a lion. And then mystical rods seem to channel the brightness of the cosmos. Yellen is as big as Lawrence of Arabia, as shape-shifting as 2001: A Space Odyssey, a magic realist film, and one of cinema's most complex works of art. In America in the 80s, if power was anywhere, it was here, on Wall Street. Greed was good here. Money gushed through this canyon like a torrent. This man, Ronald Reagan, America's president, said that the money would trickle down to places like this. But it didn't. A new television channel, Music Television, broadcast its first music video, this one, in 1981. The song was about video. The imagery used screens within screens, pink light, fast editing, and stepped cuts. All these things became part of the language of popular imagery around the world. A scene like this shows how music video influenced film. The editing's fast, the angles are numerous and sexy. The music is the only thing in the soundtrack. We don't hear her feet, for example, and the scene has no story element. It's pure impressionism. But 80s America was mostly a male Reaganite dreamland. This film was part of the dreamland. Rich color, a roller coaster in the sky, close-ups of pilots like those in Star Wars. Tom Cruise is flying over the Persian Gulf. He encounters Russian MiG pilots, so flies upside down, this close, and gives them the finger.
Greetings! Watch the birdie! Jeez, I cracked myself up.
Pure Cold War male fantasy. Many of the shots last just 2 or 3 seconds. The cutting rate of pop promos and adverts, edited on computers. Scenes could be moved around, shortened, lengthened, and reviewed in computer edit suites in seconds.
Okay, sidewinder missile select.
An advert for the new masculinity, the new America, the new cinema, the new dreaming. No American dream was more potent than this one. We float into David Lynch's Blue Velvet like a spaceship landing on Earth. We're in an idealized American small town, the sort of place where firemen wave as they pass.
Bluer than velvet was the night.
White picket fence, children go to school in slow motion.
From the stars, she wore blue.
But Lynch's velvety textures usually gave way to something more fearful. He took us to the dark world of Victorian London in The Elephant Man, for example, and tracked into a close-up of a doctor who's sympathetic to John Merrick, just as the actor, Anthony Hopkins, drops a tear. Luck and beautiful craftsmanship. But the movie shows us the surrealism of Lynch's imagination. As he filmed, side on, the bulbous growths on Merrick's skull, here, for example, he was reminded of the explosions of smoke from a recently erupted volcano, Mount St. Helens. A deeply original visual rhyme. Such connections take us to the crux of Lynch. His films protest against the rationality and understandability of everyday life. He worked with unconscious material the way that a carpenter works with wood. He says that the key scene of any of his films, the scene that often combines the beauty of life with its terror, is the eye of the duck scene. Because, as he put it, when you look at a duck, the eye's always in the right place.
A candy-colored clown they call the Sandman.
The eye of the duck scene in Blue Velvet is this one.
Just to sprinkle stardust and to whisper, go to sleep, everything is all right. I close my eyes, then I drift away into the magic
Orbison's song combines with the intoxication of Dennis Hopper's character.
Like dreamers do, then I fall asleep to dream.
As if that beauty hurts. In dreams, indeed. Like Ronald Reagan, David Lynch had an almost abstract fear of the outside world. But he didn't try to push that fear away. He stared at it through a brilliant frame. Lynch said that as people get older, their window in the world closes. This is what was happening to his country in the 80s and its cinema. After David Lynch, the second great American director to emerge in the 80s was Spike Lee. He thumbed his nose at white America and bourgeois blackness and was inventive with movie form. Take his film Do the Right Thing, which was shot on this block in Brooklyn. It's set on a single sweltering day and builds like a pressure cooker as tensions between local blacks, Latinos and whites are sparked by events at a pizzeria. Lee and his cinematographer, Ernst Dickerson, use heightened colours to match the film's boiling themes. They filmed with tilted camera angles to render things off kilter.
Move on, you're blocking my view. You are ugly enough. Don't stare at me. The evil eye doesn't work on me.
Mother system.
A technique borrowed from one of Lee's favourite films, The Third Man, in which the non-horizontal camera was used to show the imbalance of the world of the story. Lee himself plays the character Mookie in the film's climax, the most striking moment of protest in 80s American cinema. Again, saturated colour, Lee picks up a trash can. The camera tracks with him. Then it rushes with the can as Lee throws it through the window of the pizzeria. At the end, Lee pairs a quotation from Martin Luther King denouncing violence with one from Malcolm X advocating it in self-defense. David Lynch and Spike Lee were high watermarks in the otherwise low tide of American cinema in the 80s. Neither, however, spoke the truth about modern life and helped create the radical independent film movement in America in the 80s as much as this man and woman, writer-director John Sayles and producer Maggie Renzi. They used a road less travelled to get their movies made and became America's state-of-the-nation filmmakers.
When we started, we really had no idea of the future.
Yeah, that there was any place for us. We didn't really analyze it a whole lot. We just started making stories.
We probably knew by that time that like Lucas and Spielberg had gone to film school, but they belonged to Hollywood, which is a place that we never thought we'd have anything to do with, although John had started writing for Hollywood. So there you were on the periphery of it, but there was no expectation that we were building a career when we made Return of the Secaucus 7.
It was about the reunion of a group of college friends 10 years after they'd been arrested on their way to an anti-war demonstration. The film felt truthful because it wasn't edited in a flashy MTV way. The camera patiently observed intelligent adult conversations about politics.
Fighting for what you believe in.
No offense, but your senator is just fighting to keep his job and his house on Martha's Vineyard.
Do you know that? Do you really know that? Have you looked at his record?
All right, how did he stand on the canal treaty?
Wait a minute, When we started making movies, one of the things that I was always interested in was, what do I see in life around me that I don't see on a big screen? When I started working for the studios, a lot of those were more heroic movies. And I was aware of, that's movie making, and there's the hero and the girl and the best friend and everybody else is an extra. Whereas the stories I was interested in, I came out of being a novelist. On screen, the characters were more complex and they weren't absolutely heroic. They might be the protagonist, but like your friends, they might be somebody you love and care about, but they don't always act in a noble way. They don't always do what you wish they would do.
So I think from the beginning, the smartest thing that we did is decide to make the movies in our own way. That meant casting them in our own way and having complete creative control over the way we made them, and that includes non-hierarchical and not luxurious. It was like Hollywood was only there to see if John could get screenwriting work. I have less and less respect for them. I think they don't even do what they do very well anymore. They spend much too much money. They've lost whole huge sections of the marketplace. I was talking before about the adult audience. It takes them, 9 writers to come up with a script that's no better than the first version. I used to be afraid of them and intimidated by them, and now I realize they don't do their jobs very well. And that's one reason why the dinosaurs die.
Now you're older than them.
And now I'm older. Now it could be their mother, heaven forfend. Our movies do require paying attention, taking time, engaging with characters. And because of that, the legacy's good. It's tough to get the money for what we do. Mm-hmm. But when I meet the audience, I'm always glad that we have never changed that.
Yeah, and most, mainstream filmmakers that we know who work within the studio system haven't done much better than we have as far as the number of movies they've gotten to make and getting to make their dream projects or whatever. And they're much more likely to end up saying, oh, you should have seen my cut, which we've never had to do.
Sayles and Renzi were the standard bearers for new independent American film. Much of the do-it-yourself and political cinema of the 90s derives from their approach. In France in the 80s, movies seemed to want to kick the protest films of Sayles and Renzi in the teeth. Influenced by advertising, cinema became shining again. French philosophy had become interested in popular culture and postmodernism. This was a protest too, a reaction against seriousness. Into all this sped Luc Besson's Subway. Besson had excelled in pop promos and had lived in America. A roller skater snatched a handbag. His flight from the cops, filmed like a car chase on skates. The flow of action, the camera in his point of view, wide-angle shots to make the space deeper. The best new French director of the 80s, Léos Carax, combined the visual hyperactivity of Besson with a punky sense of outrage at modern life. We're on the Pont Neuf in the grand centre of Paris, the city of light. Fireworks, Public Enemy plays, Juliette Binoche. This could be a modern dance about high-class people, but in fact these characters are homeless. They sleep rough on the bridge. She's going blind. He's a drunk. Around this gritty truth about modern life, Carax built his gigantic film, the most expensive ever made in Paris. He had the entire bridge rebuilt as a set, a folie de grandeur with sweeping camera moves, glossy and wasteful in a glossy, wasteful age. The plight of homelessness was treated with the exact same style as this Hollywood musical. Grand studio sets of Paris, modern dance, colour splashed across the screen. artistic ecstasy and agony. Sashay down to Spain in the 80s and you find that protest had had a sex change. On the left is Pedro Almodovar in his 1982 film Labyrinth of Passions. Camp, a touch of goth in his eyeliner and purple drawn-on sideburns. Purple 80s lighting. Dictator Franco had died. Madrid's underground culture was transgressive, anarchic. And to this, Almodovar lobbed in a dash of the stylistic antics of this Beatles film. He loved its celebration of pop music, camera work that makes you feel you're there, its youthful surface. A scene like this was so provocative. It's a porn shoot, which conservative Spain would have hated. But the porn star's male, even more of a no-no. And it's making fun of the so-called driller killer Video Nasty, and the porn star is wearing fur, and the colour's bright, and the style's cheap, not classy.
Oye, bonita, tengo que colgarte porque me estás trozando un sádico que ha venido y tengo que esperar a que me destroce totalmente.
Almodovar's signature was the comic grotesque. He challenged old-fashioned Spain with sex and style. And in complete contrast, to see the range of Spanish cinema after Franco, look at this film, The Quince Tree's Son, directed by Victor Eriza. A man has been painting this quince tree for weeks. He painted a line on the fruit, then drew a line on the canvas to get the fruit's position exactly right. But then the fruit tree drooped a bit, so he painted another line and another. Eriza uses no camera moves, natural light and a gentle pace to capture the passing of time and the delicacy of the moment. Spain under Franco was all about lies. The Quince Tree's Son was a return to the truth, a national detox. Where politics softened in Spain in the 80s, here in Britain they hardened. A right-wing government brought protesters to the streets. The government's view was that culture should reassure and bolster a traditional sense of national pride. But the best filmmakers kicked back or focused on other identities. We're in London, a high-level shot like a musical. A middle-class Pakistani businessman is reopening his laundrette. The right-wing government liked entrepreneurs, immigrants less so.
And you're tired of work.
He dances with this white woman.
A Sardu of South London.
Yeah. But the film lobbed in more provocations. In the back room, the entrepreneur's nephew's having sex with a bloke, a white bloke. The guy dribbles champagne, the drink of 80s nouveau riche yuppies, into the mouth of the nephew. Gay, mixed-race sex. Oh, and the white bloke's a neo-Nazi. A waltz of multicultural Britain. My Beautiful Laundrette was a knee in the balls to the right-wing government, as much of a provocation as Buñuel's films were in Franco's Spain. Far more serious, but equally bold, was this Scottish film. This boy, wee Jamie, is being brought up in poverty by his granny. She sits at the fire, keeps her back to him. He's always behind her here in the cold, watching. This shot's exactly from Jamie's point of view, under the table. We see the top of it in the image. The granny sits down as usual, ignoring Jamie. But then, unusually, She takes a swig of beer. The beer seems to warm her heart. Because she reaches back into Jamie's space. As director, Bill Douglas had rigorously filmed the spaces. We know how unusual this reach is.
In all the wide world.
A simple scene, but one of the great moments of reconciliation in cinema.
Who is it, my darling?
Another Scottish filmmaker, Bill Forsyth, looked at working class life too, but he was more romantic.
I mean, I could just sit in a hill and look at a housing estate and listen to the ice cream van, you know, for quite a long while. You know, that would fill me with good feelings.
Do you want to dance? It's really good. You just lie flat down and dance. I'll show you what I mean. I'll start it off and you just join in when you feel confident enough. Okay?
Forsyth's movie Gregory's Girl looked at young people and the ordinary places where they fall in love. For most of the film, the camera is horizontal as normal, but then he has it tilted, a touch of poetry.
To the surface of this planet, while it spins through space at 1,000 miles an hour, held only by the mystery force called gravity.
Wow.
A lot of people panic when you tell them that and they just fall off. But I see you're not falling off. That means you've got the hang of it.
You know, people in a landscape, I don't mean that in a kind of visual way, but just someone finding themselves somewhere. And that moment of, you know, apprehension that you're here and this is where you are. It's a difficult moment to describe, but it's a moment that is very, very cinematic for me.
This man, Terence Davis, made the greatest British film of the 80s, Distant Voices, Still Lives. We're in Davis's own childhood, Liverpool, in the 1950s. A family home terrorised by a brutal father. We see his mom in the present and then hear the kids in the past. We've flashed backwards in time without a cut. So this image is a memory image.
Tony, are those two sisters of yours up yet?
Yeah, they're just coming down.
Oh, hiya, Mum. Morning, Maisie. Morning, Mum. Morning, Eileen. Nervous, love? A bit. Have a cup and a ciggy.
I get the blues when it's raining. The blues I can't lose when it rains. Now each little raindrop
Davis's camera tracks down the hallway.
Pane reminds me of the tears I shed. The tears were all in vain. So I sit and wait for the sun to shine all my blues away. It rained when I met you, and it rained when I lost you, so I get the blues when it rains.
One of Davis's signatures is the very slow dissolve.
There's a man going round taking names. There's a man going
Davis nearly always frames symmetrically.
I think it's due to Catholicism, because when I was growing up, it was the Tridentine Mass, and the altar was there, and you were looking at it like this. I mean, it was literally like that, and everything in the church tended to be like that, symmetrical. My great love is Vermeer, and I'm sure that's had a huge subconscious effect on me. You know, that stillness that you get, that everything tends to be symmetrical and beautifully composed. There's the most wonderful stillness about it.
Davis's love of the slow forward tracking shot comes from this moment in Intolerance.
And they literally built a crane, and they hauled the camera up this crane, and you see it come up like this, and these elephants and all these people going up the steps, absolutely breathtaking. If you are feeling exactly the same at the beginning and the end of the track, you're using your tracking correctly. You've got to feel different towards the subject.
And another influence on Davis was this crane shot in the Hollywood musical Young at Heart. A main character seems to have killed himself, a painful moment in the story, but the camera glides beautifully into a perfect world. And Davis uses this combination of beauty and pain in Distant Voices Still Lives. His youth was often painful. He lines it up and re-enters it through cinema. In doing so, he makes it beautiful and so transcends the pain. A wholly cinematic way of speaking truth to power. And then look at this movie by the Welsh filmmaker Peter Greenaway. Like Terence Davis, Greenaway likes his frames to be perfectly symmetrical.
Like this small piece of gristle that separates.
But here he takes symmetry much further.
Why do we have to have two nostrils? Why do we have to have two of everything?
Symmetry is all.
We're twins.
The two chairs and lamps balance. The woman's hair is echoed by the gilt mirror. Everything is symmetrical, except that the woman has only one leg.
Does that mean I have to be surprised?
And so, like the director himself, she wants to make the scene, her world, symmetrical, so she has the other leg cut off. Greenaway analysed imagery more than any other British director. He says that the story of film is only just beginning. If British cinema of the 80s was a brilliant tempest, its god of thunder was Derek Jarman. A man walks through a bleak, ruined landscape. It's like we're in an Italian rubble movie after World War II. This is intercut, fast, 80s style, with men with machine guns and Morris dancers, a symbol of genteel village England. It's like there's been an ideological storm. Jarman's rage and values could not be clearer. Here, a male dancer is intercut with a wreath to remember the war dead of the British Empire. And with a fire, and we hear a Nazi speech. Video editing meets Leni Riefenstahl, meets Kenneth Anger's imagery of magic and dance and frenzy. The Last of England was a thunderbolt in 80s cinema. It's hard to imagine a greater provocation to the establishment. As was this film, Videodrome. A man's watching TV alone, late at night, half switched off, half turned on. The TV throbs.
I want you, Max. You. Come on.
The idea that a machine can be sensual, something that we can kiss, have sex with. Writer-director David Cronenberg is foreseeing the sexualization of our solitary relationships with screens. Cronenberg continued to be fascinated by the boundary between hard and soft, skin and metal in modern life. Never more so than in this scene from his film Crash. A car showroom as an erotic place, almost whispered dialogue.
I'm caught.
No outside traffic noise or music, gleaming metal. Pacing like velvet, Rosanna Arquette's hair the same colour as the leather upholstery. Cronenberg's using a novel by J.G. Ballard to tell modern liberal society that we're all more down and dirty than we pretend. Assault on hypocrisy and 80s consensus. A group of actors stages a passion play as a promenade where the audience walks to follow the action. The brutalization of Christ is very real, but the actors describing historical crucifixions do so coolly, like a textbook almost.
La flagellation avait pour but d'accélérer la mort. Les crucifixions étaient fréquentes.
And they make the audience feel uncomfortable by pointing out their voyeurism.
À cette époque, la vie était courte et brutale. Il devait bien y avoir une petite foule comme ici ce soir. Les exécutions ont toujours été des spectacles populaires. C'est comme pour les accidents sur les autoroutes. Il y a toujours des amateurs.
Jesus of Montreal, like the best films of the 80s, again speaks truth to power. This time, the power is us, the audience.
Darius, le roi de Perse.
It and Cronenberg's films tell us that we lie to ourselves about our bodies, our sex, our values. The bravery of the best 80s films was exciting. And then came the 90s, the era of digital and the internet, when reality started to lose its realness, but cinema entered another golden age.